What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. If you listened a few episodes ago, I talked about what was needed to shop out the bounty. Well, it's complete. So I thought I'd give you a rundown of what exactly I did. This was a working game that needed a little bit of attention, and I outlined what needed to happen. And here's what I did. So I took apart the steppers, which appeared like they had accumulated a bit of dirt. If you'll recall, when I got the game, I took the steppers apart and cleaned them, and I did not spend a lot of time cleaning the rest of the head. So dirt and dust and grime and whatnot was all able to kind of shake out into these mechanisms. And while they were not filthy, I didn't want them to get any worse than they were. So I took the spiders off, cleaned the rivets again, re-lubed them, and then put it all back together. And that's it for the steppers. Now, I had 3 specific problems. I had a red letter game that wouldn't pay out. It would just drop the balls and then die. I had a skill shot that occasionally would never show the number that you needed. I could hear the relays going off, but you couldn't see what you needed. And lastly, I had a magic screen misalignment issue, and that required the disassembly of the magic screen unit in order to correct. So, here's what I had to do to fix each of those problems. For the OK game issue, the red letter game, I opened up my manual and I took a look at some of the 16 pulse switches, which are located right by the motor on the mixer. Now, these 16 pulse switches are critical for a lot of the functionality of the game, and I'll get into those in another separate episode one day here soon. But in this case, for each revolution of the cams, it'll bump those switches 16 times. So there's essentially 16 bumps on the cam that the switches travel over for each rotation. So with that, they can use that to time certain things in the game. You know, you understand that the motor spins at this RPM. It's going to drive those 16 pulse switches at a certain speed, and so you understand that 16 times per revolution this is going to happen. Now, what caught my attention about it was in looking at the red letter winner payout circuit on the schematic, and I saw that this 16 pulse switch was involved. Now, it is the (2D) switch, which is normally open, and its function is during the orange section, red letter game winners, pulses OK unit step-up coil, score unit step-up coils, feature unit step-up coils, and energizes feature relays. Well, none of that was happening. So I took a look at the switch, and this switch was pitted heavily. In fact, it was pitted so heavily that the switch was no longer making contact at all. So I took my trusty file and filed that contact down, and then adjusted the contact so that it would make when it was supposed to. And guess what? That fixed the problem. So then I looked at its neighbor, and that's because I just reviewed. I hadn't even gone into the schematic to troubleshoot this one, but I was just looking at what the 16-pulse switches did on this game, just to see if there was anything else that was funky happening that might be caused by this. And what I found was 16D, which is a single-pole double throw. Here's a description. When skill shot spin or gold button is made, flashes skill shot selection light or lights. And that's exactly what wasn't happening. So I took a look at that, and this switch just needed to be adjusted. And that was it. It was making some of the time, kinda, but I made sure it had good deflection, and now that works properly every time. And the lights which appear on the backglass are actually brighter because of that. Now, I talked about the magic screen misalignment being cause for the number to light on the bingo card when you start a game. And while this is true, what ended up happening was a short. Each of these units, these magic screen units, have wire bundles that go from the disc that rotates down and into the big wire bundle. But there are certain choke points where it keeps these wires from getting tangled in, say, the magic screen motor, which would cause bad things to happen. And one of the wire bundles, the electrical tape which came from the factory, had worn away. And it was allowing some of the wires to touch. And they had touched and rubbed for so long that actually it was causing a short. So I rewrapped the wires in electrical tape and rewrapped the individual wires. And we'll see if that holds up. But for now, it's good. Now, in the process of this, I mentioned I took apart the steppers. Well, I introduced another problem. The problem that I introduced was in the skill shot. On this game, there's a white button that you play, and it will step up a separate skill shot unit. Now, this unit has 3 fingers, and they do different things. One of them allows you to actually win if you make the right number. The other one lights the appropriate light on the backglass to tell you how many replays you're winning. And then the third one is a comment or a feed. And then underneath there is also a common. Now what was happening on this is that I would step it 3 or 4 times, and then it would stop lighting the lamp on the backglass. But I would win the appropriate number of replays. So the fix for this was actually to adjust the small common wiper on the inside underneath the spider. It was not gripping hard enough, and that was causing that to be funky. So adjusted that. Everything's good there. And then it was time to playtest. And I did. Playtested a bunch, and it worked incredibly well. It plays fantastically now. In fact, I had a really hard time stopping playtesting. But then I went and cleaned the playfield. At the show, it got a lot of play. and so I wanted to go ahead and wax it and make it play as best as it possibly can, and it does. It is phenomenal. So during this time, I also oiled a couple of the clutches that needed some oiling, and I greased the chain. Now, when I say greased, I didn't, just take a grease gun and fire it in there. I took a small Q-tip and rubbed it on the chain, and I just used axle grease, just a little bit. It doesn't take much, but it's one of those metal on metal points which may require lubrication. I do it just to be thorough. The manual doesn't call it out as necessary, but I suspect it will prevent wear over time, similar to a bicycle chain. Alright, well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to go play a couple rounds of Bounty here. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.